All right. Well, we are here. It's Carl Allen from Walker's Cay, and today with us, I'm very excited. We have lovely Kristal Ambrose, and I believe she is in Eleuthera right now, if that's correct. And so I got to know Kristal a couple of years ago. As everybody knows, or a lot of people know, my history in the plastics business, and I was looking for an organization, and a couple of people told me, "Hey, you need to call Kristal," and that's kind of how we met. I think through some mutual friends of ours. But I want to talk a little bit about Kristal, and then I want her to talk a little bit about herself. But she's an amazing woman who I've gotten to know, and we've become good friends. Um, she has her bachelor's degree from, I believe, Gannon University in Erie, Pennsylvania, and a master's degree from, I believe, it's a Dalhousie University in Canada, I believe,
Yeah,
in Nova Scotia.
sure, that's right.
And some pretty neat stuff about your history. I guess a little bit like me, you're kind of a garbologist, but you've studied the garbage patch, I know, in the Pacific Ocean, which I'd love to hear more about. You've probably studied plastic on beaches more than anybody that I know out there, and that's something that's really key to what we're doing. And I think when I see and when I've gotten to know you is, you've sparked this revolution, I'll call it, in the Bahamas. I mean, it's amazing. It's this plastics, awareness revolution that that you picked up, that like nobody I've seen, and it's been tremendous to be, a part of that. And early on, I know you had an organization. I think you called it Plastic Beach, and that led to you what today is BPM, which is the Bahamas Plastic Movement, which is what I'm involved in. And I'll let you talk about that more. But Kristal's been involved in lectures all over and seminars. The one thing that I've gotten involved in is which is absolutely unbelievable, is the free summer camps that you do, and I know we'll hear about that. Um, I know you've gotten a bunch of awards. The one thing that I know about is the 2014 the Youth Environmental Leadership Award, which was phenomenal. I know you've been recognized and written in their magazines, in the Sierra Club magazine, Coastal Living. I know you've been the keynote speaker at some large events. You're like this true ocean, hero out there, that I'm proud to know, and and proud to be involved with. So, with that, Kristal, all that I've said there, I kind of rushed through it, but I hope people can see what kind of life and what kind of woman you are, and the awareness that you bring. And I think on top of that, before I let you start, the youth. I mean, that's uh, what I think really turned me on to you was, you're a voice to the youth of the Bahamas, and they listen to you, and that's the key to it. And so, when we first met, you said, "Hey, I got these neat ideas, and I want to talk to you about it." And we just, I hit it right off with you, and my history of the plastics business, and we bantered back and forth a little bit about a lot about plastics and the different types and all that. So anyways, welcome. Please, again, tell us a little bit more if I missed anything, but Kristal Ambrose, ladies and gentlemen.
Hello, world. First of all, thank you so much for having me on this platform, Carl. It's always a pleasure. And just hearing you, speak about me is like making my eyes well up. Like, is that really me he's talking about? But the thing that stuck out is, your partnership with us and your belief in the work. And that makes a lot of it possible. So thank you for that. You hit the nail on the head. My name is Kristal Ambrose, also known as Kristal Ocean for those listening. I'm from the Bahamas, born and raised, and I study plastic pollution, marine debris. My background in the field of marine sciences spans for 13 years. This June will make 13 years. I started when I was 17, fresh out of high school. Always knew it was the field that I wanted to pursue, but it wasn't until 2012 that I actually got into plastic pollution. And my trajectory on this road to plastic started when I was living on Eleuthera, and this guy, Marcus Erickson, he's the co-founder of an organization called the Five Gyres Institute. And Five Gyres, they're an organization, they study all of the gyres in all the world's ocean. And a gyre, it's a huge circulating current that traps marine debris. And people often call them garbage patches. So he came to Eleuthera, and he was like giving this talk. He gave this talk all about plastic and how it's like a floating oil spill out there, and the impact that it was having on the animals. And if you ever hear Marcus Erickson speak, he's so captivating. And then he ended the talk talking about how he was going to go on this expedition to sail from the Marshall Islands to Japan to study the Western Garbage Patch. And the Western Garbage Patch was a part of the ocean that hadn't been surveyed in over 25 years. And it was also a year after the big Japanese tsunami. So they wanted to see how fast debris was getting from Japan into the middle of that gyre. And, you know, Mark is talking about this trip. And at the time, I had just moved back home to the Bahamas. I was living in Ohio at the time, doing my associates, getting my associate's degree. Just moved back home, just started working. I had no money, but I wanted to go on this trip. And the trip cost $10,000 just for the seat.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, geez, you know, like, where am I going to get $10,000 from? So I wrote a proposal. I had it circulating all around the Bahamas, all of my old professors, and I got crickets, you know, like no one responded. No one cared. And I was like, well, it's just not meant to be. And literally 1 week before the trip set sail, I get an email from Marcus. And he's like, oh, Kristal, someone just canceled. The seat is yours for free. Meet us in the Marshall Islands. So I literally had 1 week to raise enough money. And before I knew it, I was halfway across the world going to meet some strangers to sail on a boat to study plastic.
Oh, wow.
And, you know, the first few days we were out on the boat, and, you know, I got really seasick. And I was like, why are people studying garbage? This makes no sense. Get me off of this boat. But of course, that was the seasickness speaking. But once that subsided, and I realized that here I was in the middle of the ocean, thousands of miles away from land. And there we were in the middle of the gyre with no other islands in the distance, no other boats passing us by, no airplanes flying over. It was just us, wildlife, and all of this debris, all of this plastic especially. And one day we pulled up on this giant net ball. And a net ball, it's basically a conglomerate of plastic fishing nets and ropes and other plastic items that kind of magnetize, if you will, together through all the ocean currents and movement. So in 16,000 feet of water, we came up on this big net ball. We moored up to it on our sailboat, and we got in the water and we snorkeled around it. And this is like deep blue water. You could see the sun rays beaming down. There was like a school of mahi-mahi under this net, because it becomes this ecosystem that shouldn't be. And there were other fish living in it. And once you took a closer look, there were fish that were dead in there and caught up and entangled in the rope. So we brought it back to the boat. We dissected that net, and we found 20 different types of rope. We found things like toothbrushes and toys and old combs and plastic fragments. There were like different species of shrimp and crabs, often coastal animals that were in the middle of the open ocean. And then the thing that struck me was there was this sergeant major that was dead in the net. Wow. And for me, the sergeant major, when I started in marine science and I was only 17, it was the first fish that I learned to identify, the first fish that I would see on the Bahamian reef. And here it was, this fish from home that's in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, where it shouldn't be, you know, that's a casualty of plastic pollution. And as we went through all of the different plastics that we collected out of the sea, and I'm looking at it, and I'm like, my goodness, you know, humans are so nasty. Why are they polluting the oceans? And I said, hold on, wait, I have a toothbrush exactly like that. I comb my hair with a comb just like that. I have a handful of straws and plastic forks in my cupboard at home. And I realized in that moment that I was human and I was a huge part of the problem. And equally so, I could be a part of the solution. So that was a long story, but that's where.
No, that's tremendous. I mean, so, you know, to have that experience with the Sergeant Major, I mean, that obviously hit home to you. Would you say that that initial trip to the patch there is what inspired you to bring it home?
It was, and I came back home, and like initially, I had that experience and it was amazing. But at the time, I was still a field scientist. I was still scuba diving and doing fish surveys and coral reef health surveys, and that's where I wanted to be, underwater counting fish.
Yeah.
I didn't want to be playing in garbage.
Yeah.
But then the more that I learned about the issue, the more that I saw the impact it was having, I realized, that Bahamians weren't the one that were necessarily polluting the beaches. That was just one side of the story and a small fragment of the story, when in fact that there were currents that were bringing debris from all other parts of the world to our beaches. There were human health impacts from plastic that locals didn't know about, and I just realized that people simply didn't know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it changed my perspective, because so often we like to point the finger and blame people, but you can't blame people for what they don't know or what they're not connected to. And that's when it started. So I wanted to know, like, okay, where is this plastic coming from? How much of it is on the beaches? What types of plastic is there? Is it other debris types as well? And that's where the Plastic Beach Project started. And that's what you mentioned. That was the citizen science initiative, where I got the average layperson to come out to the beach with me and collect data to help me understand, the abundance and distribution of this plastic over space and over time.
Right.
So that it sparked.
Right. So Ernest Hemingway used to say the Bahamas is the islands in the stream. So we're in the Gulf Stream there. So it's fair to say that a high percentage of the trash that's on our beaches in the Bahamas didn't come from the Bahamas. It probably came from the Caribbean. It could have come as far as from Asia, Africa, maybe.
From Africa, especially, comes across the Atlantic, and
Would
bring it right up.
Would you talk about some of the types of plastic and where you think it maybe came from? And you studied a lot of the beaches of Eleuthera, which is that eastern front. So you're going to get that current coming from the east.
Yes, and all the eastern beaches on Eleuthera, especially, those are windward beaches. Those face directly to the Atlantic. So when I did that study, I studied 3 exposures: beaches that face the Atlantic Ocean, beaches that face the Exuma Sound, which is a deep body of water, a deep sea basin in the Bahamas, and then beaches that face the Bahama Bank, which is more shallow, where more locals frequent. And the composition of debris, the beaches where more locals frequent, you see the more anthropogenic things like the beer bottles and the candy wrappers and different types of plastic bags and things like that. When you go to the eastern beaches, the eastern shores, the windward beaches that face the Atlantic and that are exposed to currents from the Gulf to the North Atlantic Gyre, and those affiliated currents, you find larger pieces of debris that are more weathered and older, and that come from different places. A main type of debris on any windward beach you go to in the Bahamas or anywhere in the Caribbean, you find these black things called octopus pots. And octopus pots, they're from the octopus fishery off of Western Africa, namely in countries like Mauritania and Morocco. And basically, they go out into the ocean, and they set these traps, and they weigh them down. The octopus come in, they collect them, and sometimes the pots are either discarded or they're lost and abandoned. So they make their way across the Atlantic and they end up on our beaches. And there's scientific evidence that's documented in various papers that can trace that debris back to that source. Another debris type that we have is that comes from the Southern Caribbean or from like Hispaniola. We had these water packages during the earthquake in Haiti, relief efforts. They would give, the victims water in these plastic sachets, and those sachets are quite common. You find them washed up on our beaches, along with other items that are manufactured in different parts of the Caribbean.
Right. So during the summer camps that you offer, and again they're free. Talk a little bit about that process of collecting it. I know you identify, you try and catalog as much as you can, and then what do you end up doing with it?
Well, so for our summer camps, it's the Plastic Pollution Education and Ocean Conservation Summer Camp. Extremely long title, so we just call it Plastic Camp for short. And the Plastic Camp is a tuition-free program that takes students, namely Bahamian students, on this holistic journey from the problem with plastic to solutions to this environmental crisis. And when we talk about plastic, it's what we can control, right? The single-use plastic. So a lot of our programming is first getting students reconnected to nature and getting them to, love being outside and love the ocean. And then we go to the beach, we learn about the issue, we go to the beach and we see it for ourselves. They see it for themselves. So it's a tangible issue. They see that they're on this beach that no one frequents, but it's filled with plastic that's washing up from so many different parts of the world. Because they can touch that plastic, they can see it, they can feel it, they can see it crumbling before their eyes into microplastics. They can see it in the water. They can see the turtles off in the distance, that may be impacted by this issue. So the students are then compelled and they feel something within to make a difference. But in our program, a lot of what we do is it's art, education, and activism, basically. So a lot of the plastic that we collect, it's upcycled into art with a message. So we make big murals out of the plastic and we put them in public spaces to raise awareness of the issue. We do trash and fashion, where the students are making jewelry out of the plastic, and again, using that as a tool to start a conversation, to raise awareness of this issue.
I've heard rumors of making Junkanoo costumes out of some of it. So
Junkanoo costumes. We make, what do we make? One summer we made trash cans out of plastic bottles. So we diverted about 500 or 600 plastic bottles from going into the landfill, and we actually made 4 trash cans out of the plastic bottles. This year with our Ocean Ambassadors Club, we were aiming to make an eco-brick bench where we take plastic candy wrappers and food wrappers and you stuff them tightly into a plastic bottle and you seal it, and you can use them to create functional structures. So we were going to make a bench where the public can sit in and also learn about the issue of plastic pollution. But the COVID stopped us in our tracks, so hopefully we can resume soon. But yeah, outside of the stuff that we do with the plastic, the students are also engaging in hands-on scientific research. So they're out in the ocean, they're trawling for microplastics. So we're out on the boat in the middle of the Exuma Sound, pulling a net behind the boat, and we're looking at how much microplastics, which are the fragmented plastics, how much of that is at the sea surface, and what impact does that have on fish, especially fish that we like to eat. So the catch that fishermen catch from the season, like mahi-mahi, wahoo, sometimes barracuda and tuna, our students are dissecting the stomach of these animals and seeing if they're actually ingesting plastic. And quite frankly, they're finding the plastic in their stomach, so they're making that connection between how their lifestyle on land impacts animals, especially animals that they like to eat. So that's another component. And then another component of the camp is your voice, right? You know all of this information. What do you do with it? So the students take everything that they learn throughout the week of the camp and they put on a community show where they use Bahamian culture and they infuse that to create songs and skits and dances and media pieces to raise awareness of this issue in their own way, and have their voices heard. So it's a very dynamic program. It's a lot that goes on. It's more than just plastic. It's truly rooted in the hopefulness of engaging young people in environmental education and activism, and using plastic as that catalyst.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things that you're doing that's tremendous is that, it goes farther than just the plastic problem with these children. I mean, I know you don't like single-use plastic. Could you talk about what you see as some of the alternatives to that? Because I guess, coming from the industry myself, I certainly see the problems, and no question about that. But then when you look at the alternative, again, you got to think of the masses now. This isn't just you and me. How to replace some of these single-use items. Can you do that efficiently and then ultimately not have, the same problem or even a bigger problem because you're using too much water or you're having to cut down trees. So could you talk about some of that and what even some, I know some of your children have talked about that. And so touch on that a minute.
Yeah, that's a very good question. And, I always tell the students, we have this very candid conversation that plastic, it's not all bad, it's a gift and a curse. The exact same thing that makes it such a great product is the same thing that makes it a detriment to the environment, and that's its durability. Its ability to be so versatile and malleable to whatever the product it's serving needs. So when we talk about solutions, it's hard, and I don't have that answer because it's all about scalability. There are things where people are using alternatives like baguettes, where they're using sugarcane fibers and different things for
Yes,
food
yes,
packaging.
yeah.
And it's great. And then there's also things that are made from PLA plastics and the plastics that are made from corn. And then there's the argument that you're using a food item or a food product that could be used to feed thousands of people to make something, again, that you use for just a short period of time and you throw away. So the interjection into the argument where we like to come in is, refusing to use the single-use things, no matter what it's made out of, and establishing that reusable culture, that bring your own culture, that bring your own mentality. But even with that, because when we think about this from the perspective of historically, and I'm speaking from being in the Bahamas, like my grandmother and generations way back then, that always existed. If you opened a can of beans, that became your cup. My grandfather used to make lemonade, and we used to drink it out of the tin can. The burlap sack where they would bring in the flour and the rice, that was used to make clothes. The old tires was used to make shoes. So there was never this idea of waste. There was always this reuse and this upcycle. But obviously, we get caught up in globalization, and as time moves, you just have to adapt. So when we talk about this reuse culture and all of these things, I realize it's a privilege to speak from that in this era, because not everyone has access, and the whole environmental movement is quite often sometimes gentrified. And who has access to these materials? Sometimes, it's expensive to buy a new water bottle or to buy a canister. And what we do with our organization is start where you are and tend to your part of the garden. You don't have to get anything fancy. Just take a fork out of the drawer from home and take that with you. Get an old pasta jar and, put your water in there. But in terms of what is the solution, I don't know.
I mean, let me ask you this. One of the certainly the Bahamians, they love this product I'm going to talk about, as well as tourists. But the foam clamshell. I mean, how many Bahamians love to go to the takeout, and then that clamshell ends up in the Nassau Harbor, and it ends up floating in the Gulf Stream somewhere. And how do you replace that with?
And that is replaceable. So I guess when I say I don't know the solution, when I was speaking to like food packaging and all these things, because we import so much things into the country that is in plastic, that I don't have an answer for how to get rid of that. But when we talk about food, that is doable, and that's what the government set out to do, and what our organization set out to do as well with this single-use plastic ban. Styrofoam, not only is it a detriment to the environment, it lasts forever, it has no value in terms of recycling, and it is a major health detriment to human health. Styrene is one of the most deadly, I don't say deadly, but it's a very harmful chemical. But with that,
you've got a big styrene. Well, they don't make the styrene there, but they extrude the styrene there in Freeport.
In Grand Bahama, right?
But I'll tell you what's happening in the States with this pandemic, Kristal, is the reusable grocery bag has gone away, because of the virus, and the disposable bag is back. But even before that, I question those reusable, especially the woven, polypropylene, because way before the virus, there's things like botulism, salmonella, E. coli that has been proven to be in the bottom of those reusable sacks. I mean, let's face it, the cleanest environment known to man is inside a plastic bag. Okay, it's been heated up to 500 degrees before it was sealed. And so, I understand the problems with plastic bags, but when we talk about diseases, plastic plays a pretty important role in controlling the spread of it. And so I'm struggling with how are we going to replace, the carry-out bag in the Bahamas, because that's another item like the clamshell in the Bahamas. It's huge. Everybody has a t-shirt bag, but you and I have talked about walkers and what we're trying to do there. And I love the three: reuse, reduce, and recycle, is what you were just explaining about. Our parents, they were hoarders. They didn't throw anything away. So, there was always something became something else, and, now we're in a situation where, we're a push button society, and, we expect things immediately. And then part of that is single use plastic.
Right.
I miss the plastic straw. I don't know about you, but the paper straw, it's just not cutting it for me. It's just not, but
And I think like the thing with that is again, bringing it back to that reusable culture, is like getting into the habit of bringing your own materials with you where you go. And I have been reading some articles about, the plastic industry, especially, that are lobbying for these bans to now be relaxed in the COVID era because of, the fear of the bacteria or, the virus being on surfaces like reusable bags. But in one article that I was reading from Vice magazine, it mentioned that, in fact, plastic, that particular surface, would hold the bacteria longer than a woven cloth bag that you can wash. So I think that comes down to individuals too, like making sure that you wash.
That's true. But then again, if you got to wash, now we're using water, and I think there's a real argument of the one nice thing about plastic is that you use very little water when you make a plastic bag or you make a plastic cup or some kind of container. Very little water is involved, versus paper or reusable, washable. We've got to think about that. We also have water pollution, and so the argument is endless. I think the one thing you and I do agree on is that it starts with the kids. And what I like to see is when your kids come up with solutions, well, I don't need that anymore. I can use something else.
Mm-hmm.
And to be able to use, a fixed container, or a reusable straw. I mean, what's wrong with washing a straw out? I mean, so I like to think that kids know there's a problem, but I also like them to think that all plastics are not bad, and that if mankind didn't have plastic, I mean, you'd shut down hospitals, our transportation system. Our food is probably the cleanest it's ever been because of plastic. So, and you said it earlier, Kristal, it's the best thing that man ever invented, and it's one of the worst. And but I like to think that there's a positive angle to it, and that it can be fixed. I mean, we know that you and I have talked about this. 80% of the pollution in the ocean comes from 10 rivers around the world, and that's been identified. And I think if we can control those rivers, we ought to think about starting there.
But also, we have to think about where that waste is coming from that gets into these rivers. Yes, they are in very developed countries, right, with large populations. But when we think about plastic and the waste that we generate, we have to look at it from the life cycle, from its extraction, from when they frack the oil or get to mine the petroleum to make the plastic. The people that live in these what they call cancer alleys, especially in Louisiana, where you have people living near these factories where they're extruding oil to create this product that's used for that short period of time where plastic is used, the chemicals that's used to make it through the end of its life, where it ends up in a landfill, where it could end up at a recycling facility to potentially be recycled, or it could end up on the doorstep of some Southeast Asian country for poor or disenfranchised people to sort through. And that's what happens with America's recycling, with most of Europe's recycling, and a lot of Canada's recycling as well. So it's like, where is your waste going? So yeah, those 10 rivers, most of them are in Asia. They're also connected to waste that's coming from the Western world.
Yes.
That's further attributing to the problem. So it's hard to just say, yeah, 80% is coming from these countries. But when you trace it back, all the way back,
Yeah.
From extraction to disposal, it's still a big issue. And I think that's for all of us on the other side of this fight against plastic pollution. Like my fight is driven because I love the ocean. I'm connected to the ocean and I want to protect the ocean. But the more that you learn about it, there's so many different factors of
Yes.
this issue, from the health to the recycling. And it's like, recycling sounds good, but how can it be effective? And that's what I'm interested in. I'm like, we can use plastic, but I want to see a world where plastic exists, because I don't think there's going to be a world where there's no plastic.
Right.
We have to admit to ourselves that we need it, and I would lie if I say plastic isn't still a major part of my life, especially living on a small island. Everything that we use in this country, almost 90%, if not more, comes wrapped in plastic.
Yeah.
Every time I have to throw something away in our trash can, I feel horrible because we don't have large-scale recycling. Everything goes to the landfill, and even though I work with kids, I take the responsibility that it's not on their shoulders to find solutions to this issue, because even though I may empower them and say, use your metal straw, so much is still against them when the tap to plastic production has not been turned off or has not been reformed, meaning that the problem in their generation, in their lifetime, is still going to continue to be an issue. So when we talk about plastic, we want to have the open, honest conversation with industry, saying this is a vital item, but it's not useful for everything. And take responsibility in the waste recovery and use that. How can we create these closed loop systems where we're not using raw materials or extracting non-renewable resources like petroleum to make these products that don't have a long life? So I think that's where the gray area is.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, well, that's wonderful. I know the curriculum that you had last summer, and it was amazing, the impact that you have. But I know the pandemic and all that. Is there anything that you got planned for this year that we can get in before school starts back up?
I'm really hoping to get my kids back together, like I said. So we have our plastic camp, which is a summer program, and then we recently launched our Ocean Ambassadors after school program, and that links our summer programming to the ongoing academic school year. And with our students, we diverted, and this was pretty amazing. So the kids, we together collectively, we decided we wanted to divert plastic from going to the landfill. And at our school, at the Harbor Island Green School, where I'm based, our school is a plastic-free campus, and we can do that because we only have about 30 students. But at the local all-age school, the Harbor Island all-age school, where there are about maybe 250, 300 kids, where they use plastic every single day. The breakfast is served in styrofoam with the plastic forks, the plastic bottles, the candy wrappers, and the chip bags. Like, they generate a lot of waste on the campus. And one of my kids was like, well, Miss Kristal, like, why can't we help the other schools? How can we help them to reduce their waste? So we figured we wanted to help them to cut down on the waste that they were generating, and that would ultimately end up in the landfill. So we launched a competition at the school to see which class could collect the most plastic bottles and candy wrappers. And the winners would win a pizza party. And I was like, okay, I don't know if the kids will be excited. Let's see what happens. The competition was supposed to last for a month. Carl, in less than 2 weeks, we collected about 3,000 plastic bottles. The kids were so into it and so determined to win this pizza party that the ripple effect was after school. They were forming groups and going into the bushes and cleaning up the island.
Oh, wow.
Collecting plastic from the bushes, from the beach, from the roadside. Every time I would be walking home, they'd be like, Miss Kristal, the fifth graders are cheating, they're stealing our bottles, we're gonna win. So it like created this whole byproduct of them cleaning up their island and having pride without even realizing it, even though they were incentivized by a pizza dance party. In that time, we were able to divert 3,000 plus bottles from going to the landfill, along with about 4 or 5 huge sugar sacks of candy wrappers and food wrapping. So basically, what we want to do this summer, what I want to do is continue to build that project that we were working on. We were going to use all those bottles to make the eco brick bench. That could be a functional bench that's placed in the middle of the community where people can come and learn about the issue from a sign that our students would create. So I want to have a leadership summit where we can resume this project, but also help our students to understand their voice. How do you give a presentation? How do you research? How do you present this information to someone? And how do you learn more about waste management? Because quite often, it's very vague. We don't have a lot of time with the kids in the summer. It's like, don't use single-use plastic, but now I want to dig deeper. And that's why I mentioned, I would love to have you talk to them from the perspective of being in the industry and producing plastic. And I'll never forget you said this, and it's so true, that, you make plastic trash bags. And that's what we need to keep things contained when we're transferring waste, right? So it does have its purpose, it serves its purpose. So that's what I want to work on this summer, that leadership summit, getting our kids to the next level of activism that goes beyond just saying, here's my metal straw. But I can tell you exactly why I'm using this, what happens to a plastic straw, what happens to waste in the Bahamas and other small island developing states. And then also we have a hands-on component to make a bench. So if the outside opens up, hopefully by July or August, maybe we can have a small 5-day program where we also have a camping trip in there, because I like to make sure that nature is a huge part of what we do. A snorkel camping trip is also.
So if people out there wanted to help out, they would look up the Bahamas Plastic Movement and your website. What's the best way?
The best way, if you're interested in donating, BahamasPlasticMovement.org. If you go on our website, there's a donate page. You can donate to us. Or if you just want to do it directly through PayPal, you can use the email address BahamasPlasticMovement@gmail.com. And for all of you listening, we are the grassiest grassroots organization you can think of. We're completely volunteer-based. So we're in the community and on the ground and doing the work with the people that live in this beautiful place. So everything that we do is all through collaborative efforts with organizations like Space to Create, Harbor Island Green Schools, Ride or Die Friends, who always have my back, and the kids who are committed to doing this work. So any additional help and support that we can get, we're always grateful for.
Great. Well, Kristal, it's been a weird year. I mean, we had, the Dorian and of course now the pandemic, and this is the longest I can almost remember in my life that I haven't been to the Bahamas. So I'm really getting antsy here. And once we do, we're going to be in, Walker's pretty much the whole summer. And I really want you to come out if you get a chance. We have a plan there that, we're going to bring in natural gas. I don't know how you feel about this, but we're going to eliminate diesel. And that takes out, 80% of the emissions and about 50% of the decibels. Okay. And it's very abundant. And so 20% eventually solar. Okay. We're going to try and get to the point. I don't have enough room to put in all solar, or I would. And for a lot of reasons, I don't like windmills, but we believe this natural gas thing is going to be a great solution, which I'm going to show you when you come. But also, and I don't know if we've talked about this before, but an anaerobic digester.
Oh, I'm familiar with the anaerobic digester. The methane breaks down human waste.
Yes.
You can cook with it.
It'll break it down into a little biochip. I've seen it work. It'll take, roughly 70 pounds of trash and turn it into 7 pounds of trash, in about 48 hours. And it eats plastic, glass, metal. So we're going to be looking at some of that. But, we're going to try and, use as much, or excuse me, as little, single-use plastic as we can. But again, I'm still wondering, can we get the masses to look at it that way? And I think Walker's will be a good little microcosm of how we can be pretty much emission, and waste free. And I'm looking forward to, I've told your prime minister this, that we could make Walker's kind of the,
Model island.
microcosm of what the futures of the Bahamas could look like.
I think so. For the LNG, does that require you to drill? I
No,
remember like years ago it came up and it was like controversial, but I never did the research. So what is LNG?
okay,
For
so
natural gas.
basically, we are basically have a company that we're working with called Capstone, and they're turbines, and we're basically importing the gas from my state, Texas, and it will be probably like four. We need about four tubes, four containers a month. But I'll be supplying three islands. You'll be supplying Walker's, Little Grand, and Grand Key. Um, it's a lot cheaper than diesel. Okay, so I'll be able to reduce the price of energy will come down almost 50% for the people on Little Grand Key. And as I said, 80% reduction in the emissions, and about a 50% reduction in the sound, which would be nice because we're on an island, you know. But it's one of these things where the natural gas is so abundant. I mean, in Texas, we have about 60 years of proven oil reserves, proven. Okay, we have 4,000 years at current rates of natural gas. We should be exporting it. I've always been a big believer in natural gas because it's so abundant and it's clean and it's cheap, and we will have it forever. If there's something that better that comes along, I love it. Solar, I'm a big fan of solar. I love it, but it's limited. I think at the end of the day, I'll be able to do about 20% solar with the amount of land we have.
Okay.
So
And with the LNG, how is it extracted in Texas? Like that
so
process.
it's just like it is, you know. I mean, again, there are some bad things about it, but most of the natural gas in Texas is from fracked wells, and
Mm-hmm.
some of it comes from Oklahoma, where they dig. You know, it's 2,000 to 3,000 feet down. They impact that with water, and there's been some bad press there, but uh, it's generally safe. We don't in Texas. There's millions and millions of people that are employed there. We very rarely hear of people getting major injuries or hurt. But yes, it's extracted the same way that you would extract it for natural gas LP or gas for the home. But it's compressed and it's liquefied, and that's how we're able to efficiently get it over to the Bahamas. It comes to the Bahamas frozen at like minus 240 degrees, and because of that, it makes it safer and easier to handle.
And this will be used for electricity and power on that one.
Yes, ma'am. So we'll power, all the structure that we have. We're not putting a hotel on Walkers, but we're putting like 40 little villas, little 1 and 2 bedroom villas, and then we'll have a very nice restaurant, of course, a bar, and then 90 docks. We're going to have quite a few spaces for everybody to come in, and I'm catering to the whole market. We're going to have center console. We'll have the convertibles, and then I can even get a couple of the big yachts in there. But this is, once we're done, especially with what's going down on the Abacos, we're going to be one of the first that makes the comeback. And those people really need it up there. I mean, there's just people that haven't been to work in a long, long time now, and people need to get back to work.
Yeah. And in terms of like marketability of walkers, like in terms of the greening, and you mentioned you're trying to figure out the single-use plan and the waste. And I think for me personally, like my next journey is how do we see the value in waste and not just see it as trash? Because I feel like it's so much more than that, and not just plastic, but the food waste that we generate in the country, the green waste. How can we create these different diversion schemes, whether that's turning that food waste into compost, turning that plastic, whether that's post-consumer plastic or plastic that's collected from the beaches, whether we can chip that down and again close loop, use that to make new products without having to go to that non-renewable resource.
Yes.
And for walkers, with what you're doing with the biodigester and everything like that, I think it's great. But if you can somehow incorporate that right back into farming and growing food on the island and actually having a zero waste,
Yes.
as best as you can, inclusive of eliminating single-use plastic.
Yes.
I think it's a good start.
Yes. I mean, and it's going to be a good way to experiment. I mean, we do feel as though we could do almost 50% of our food needs, you know, if we were doing it properly. We've had some people study that, and you know, the greenhouse and some of the outdoor hydroponics that we could do. You can't do it 100%. You know, we'll still be importing food, and
Right.
and I hope again one of the big businesses around there is hopefully we'll have the fishermen be supplying us, you know, the sustainable food out there like snapper and grouper, and managed properly lobster, and even conch. We have a tremendous. I'm very proud to say that our conch up at Walker's is in tremendous shape, and that, you know, if it's harvested properly and efficiently, that it's sustainable. As you know, we have a national park north of Walker's, and this is going to be the first time that anybody will be able to kind of keep an eye on it. So we're going to kind of help the government a little bit to keep an eye on that park there, because not only is it a park, it's a nursery is really what it is, and that's where the fish grow and the conch and the lobster, so that they can populate the rest of it. So I'm all about protecting that park up there.
Which park is
That's the Walker's Cay National Park.
it? Oh.
Yeah, it's not very well protected because it's so far out there. Nothing like how they protect the exumas and stuff, but I can tell you it's in very good shape. The only thing that hurt it a little bit was the hurricane damaged some of the reef in there, but that's, you know, that's natural damage.
And how are you with Walkers? And I mean, I just saw today a news report that there is potentially a system that's developing, and this could be for the 6th season in a row where we have an early system before the season begins. So how are you incorporating climate change adaptation into the Walkers plan? And God forbid another storm comes.
Oh yeah, I mean that is a concern, you know, and they're calling for an active, you know, season this year. But you know, look, Walker's is a small island, as you know, and so Mother Nature has to have pretty good aim to hit me. If you study the major hurricanes that have hit Walker in the last 50 years, really there's only been 4 of them, and 2 of them were back to back, and that was in '04 with Gene Francis. This one was bad for 2 reasons. You know, when I know I'm singing to the choir with you, but it was huge, number one, but it was slow. You know, that thing, when it hit the Abacos, it was doing a half a mile an hour with 200-mile-an-hour sustained winds. And so, you know, it was basically a blender that was moving its way along the northern, you know, Bahamas there. And so, I mean, everybody loves to be environmentalists and help the environment until a storm blows us away, you know, or a pandemic hits us. But we will always, Walker's is so beautiful and so pristine, and the last thing I want to do is wreck that ecosystem out there. I mean, the bone fishing, the tarpon fishing, the permit, the diving, it's pristine, and I have a responsibility, I have a duty to protect that, and we're going to go to great lengths to make sure that Walker's and our surrounding area doesn't change. But then again, you know, we provide a good venue for people 100 miles from Florida to come over and enjoy the beauty of the Bahamas and help the economy. I mean, to me, bringing back Walker's, it's a gateway to the Bahamas. It's going to be a real win-win-win for everybody. And again, I promise, and looking everybody in the eye here, that we'll do it, you know, ecologically and environmentally as friendly as we can, and sustain that as we go. Not only building it, but you know, as we're running it as well. You know, there's roughly 500 people that live over on Little Grand. I'm going to cut their unemployment rate down to, you know, 1%. I'm going to be employing a lot of those people over there. One thing that really needs help is their landfill, because all the debris from Dorian we ended up putting there, you know, and it's so small we have nowhere to put it. I'm probably either going to have to burn it, and I know you don't want to hear that, you know, or we're going to have to bring it to Freeport, you know. So it is what it is.
Yes, the reality, we have a long way to go, but
We do.
I think having productive conversations like these and, you know, looping in different stakeholders and just revisioning,
Yes.
you know, how things can possibly work in this country, that meet the triple bottom line, right, of people, planet, profit.
Yeah.
I think if we lead with that and this balance between all of those components,
Yes.
we'll see.
All right. Well, Kristal, this has been a wonderful podcast here, and you know, we're going to be doing this with a bunch of guests, and part of what we want to do is follow up, because I always thought that, you know, you have one podcast and what does that do? You know, I think that we're bringing some awareness right now to a lot of people, and so I'm coming, the whole LNX team, as soon as we can. We're hoping that, you know, here anytime next couple of weeks. We're going to be in Walkers and around Grand the whole summer. So I'd like to redo this as kind of a follow-up, you know, with you coming out and visiting us sometime this summer. Okay.
I would love to. I really hope you guys can make it down.
Yeah, I mean, you've seen my fleet. I think you saw us when we were at Powell Point there.
Yes, you know, actually, I had a photo pop up last week. It was about a year ago last week. We were having dinner. So
Oh, you saw it? Oh, good.
Yeah.
Well, Kristal, it's been again tremendous. You're one of my favorite people there, and I just can't say enough how much I appreciate, and we all should appreciate what you do, and I hope this brings awareness to your life and what you're doing for the Bahamas and the kids, and this awareness that nobody's done. You brought the spark, the revolution, and you are truly an ocean hero. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Listen, thank you, Carl, man. I really appreciate you and your time and this platform and your support. You can't put a price on that. That means a lot. Your kind words and your belief. It truly goes a long way. So thank you for believing in the children of this country.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you so much. And by the way, I spoke with your mother last night, and she sounds like a wonderful woman. So please tell her I said hello, and she thanked me so much for helping you. So what a nice lady.
Oh, thank you. I'll let her know for sure. I'll pass it on.
Okay. We'll see you soon.
All right, take care.